Right. Good afternoon. Now, in terms of augmenting my reality, I do need to wear glasses, so if I'm peering in a random direction, you'll know why that's happening. What I'm going to cover now, very, very briefly, is what distinguishes AR and mixed realities from virtual reality, and what we need to do to effectively augment human experience of the physical environment, thereby helping AR to realize its full potential. What we have to remember, and I'm not the first to touch on this today, augmented reality is still in what I call the dancing elephant phase, where the wonder is less how well it does something than the fact that it does it at all. Now, whatever devices we look at, whether we look at the HoloLens, with its single plane, restricted field of view, but an incredibly useful device, or we look to the so far massive disappointment of the Magic Leap. We got ours on Monday, and I can't actually repeat what our CTO is saying about it. So most of the problems are software, though, so possibly there may be a solution there. So, as I say, to date, because of these being early doors, most AR development is focused on the challenges of delivering the actual experience and the technology through which it's delivered. And that's a necessity, but we're now looking beyond that. We believe that AR will only come of age and create its own distinct identity once it can be used to augment human capability through seamless integration of physical and virtual environments, not just visually, but behaviorally, in intent, and in context. At that point, it separates a clear path for itself from VR, and I'm not denigrating VR at all there. It's about actually being able to create the most appropriate experience and the technology through which we deliver it. But we think that AR has by far the greater potential to become a casual and seamless way of augmenting our experience for how we interact with the world through our machines. Just a little bit about us. Intelligent Realities is both the name of our company and our goal, basically what it says on the box. We're an offshoot of an LA-based AR and VFX company, and our founders have a few decades of experience in VR, AR, games, collaborative software, AI, and enterprise analytics, so a reasonably full deck there. And in terms of background, we've got BAFTA nominations, Cody Awards, and an Oscar to our credit, so in our various incarnations. So we've got a reasonably good pedigree, and in fact, a lot of our work is with some of the major West Coast studios at the moment. The reason I'm here is that we're actually looking at moving most of our R&D back to the UK. I've just spent a very pleasant couple of days both here in Media City, but particularly over at the SciTech Desbury campus, which is like a very, very shiny toy box for anybody in the tech and creative industries. So it's all looking good so far. But our focus is combining the sensory experience that fuses the physical and the virtual with the ability to dynamically discover and incorporate relevant information with that experience and ensure that the whole thing responds appropriately to the interaction between the physical environment, the virtual elements in that environment, and the characters and the people, the participants, and single multi-user, I'm not making any distinction there, the participants themselves. And the trick is doing that in a time frame that doesn't actually require a supercomputer or a massive cloud GPU to actually do it. We're looking at doing it on phones and tablets. So if we start just in terms of positioning, if we start with the obvious, the way we explain to some of the studios that we are working with and some of the partners we're working with where things sit, and others have alluded to this as well. If you look at the vertical axis, there is the coupling between the physical and the virtual worlds. How close coupled are they? And on left to right is whether it's a virtualized environment or whether it's a physical environment into which we're bringing virtual elements. So if you look there, virtual reality sits firmly top left there. It's relatively uncoupled from the physical world. Most VR systems are only doing enough to give you a control space in which to work and hopefully stop stop you from walking into walls. That doesn't work in my office, which has tapering ceilings, which none of the none of the lighthouses recognise. So I'm forever bruising my forehead. Mixed reality, obviously, is virtualizing heavily, but it is closely coupled to the real world. And then, of course, 10 years ago, those of us who were working in augmented reality were somewhere up there where it was just considered a really cool thing to be able to throw something into somebody's visual field, or possibly with a little bit of context given by GPS. Now, though, we're right down bottom right there with our headsets and with our phones and tablets. So the point there is a strong technological overlap, as we know, between AR and VR, but they're very different beasts. And a lot of AR applications at the moment are actually things that will actually work at least as well, if not better, in VR. Any developer who asks me, should we be doing this in AR and VR, then I respectfully suggest to them they may be asking the wrong question and they need to take a couple of steps back and work out what the actual nature of the experience they're trying to deliver. So where VR allows us to interact with visualization in a self-consistent and self-referential simulation, AR is, or should be, all about augmenting our ability to interact with, create understanding from, and I'll come to that in a minute, and enhance our interaction with the world around us. To do so, it needs to combine the ability to recognize and understand the physical environment with a continuous understanding of the context of the experience and the intent and behavior of its participants, and be able to self-adapt to all that, both spatially and contextually. That's not a small order, and we don't believe we're going to get there tomorrow, but we've got a rough roadmap that at least gives us the direction to head in. So, and for clarity, I'm talking about, this slide is actually largely redundant in this audience, but I use this to show that basically if you've got a spectrum with virtual reality at one end, where you're interacting in synthetic worlds, augmented reality, adding virtual stuff to the real world at the other end, and mixed reality basically combines a bit of the two. Now, in moving towards what I call fully responsive AR, we face a number of technological, perceptual, and market challenges, and these often fall into the area of creative expectation versus technological possibility. We all have a tendency to get slightly ahead of ourselves in terms of what the technology can deliver. What we do have, though, is a high bar to entry from our audience, particularly in the consumer sector, because an audience these days is conditioned by the suspension of disbelief that modern movies engender, despite the fact that we know everything is rendered offline and even then uses lots of optimization tricks to make it possible. In a slightly more specialized audience, gamers are familiar with 3D and VR games rendered on modern high-end graphics engines. But of course, VR, by comparison to AR, is actually rather easy. You don't have to continually track and synchronize the world on a battery-powered mobile device at the same time as you're actually delivering the virtual experience. And then the other thing, and this applies both in consumer and enterprise markets where we operate, is the inertia of the familiar. People are familiar with ways of doing things, interfaces, and ways of working that they tend to try and carry with them into any new environment. That's something, when we're designing the experiences and the interfaces we need for AR, we haven't found the answer yet. One of the greatest weaknesses at the moment of Magic Leap is its user interface is inconsistent, it's crude, and it's slow. I wish they'd actually put some more of that $2.3 billion into actually thinking about the AI, the UI. So our focus at the moment is on phones and tablets. What we're doing is, and I don't have any videos because I'm running out of time, but we're working on everything from, we're working with doctors in California. We're creating a surgical training simulation that lets you move around and look in full animation, either interactively or in an animated form, and that's for a new type of advance in scoliosis surgery. We've got a 3D cartoon, linear cartoon model we call HoloToons. We've got some interactive behaviors with a bunch of little yellow characters whom you may recognize there, so you can imagine who we're working with there. And we're also doing educational, diagnostic, and therapeutic interventions for young children going through different stages of social and emotional learning. So it's early doors yet, but what we're doing essentially, and I've just had the 1 minute flash up from Shuling, is we are combining the technology that we're all familiar with in terms of delivering an experience in AR or VR. We are combining that with advanced machine learning, multiple techniques in both classical analytics and deep learning to be able to condition the response in an appropriate time frame for any experience. And we're gluing those together with some very advanced self-adaptive, self-organizing data fusion techniques, which both merge all the data streams coming out of an experience, condition the data streams going back from the AI into the experience, and act to self-discover new content from the outside world that is relevant to the context of the experience at any given time. So I'm having to rush a little there. I'm definitely out of time there. But we're already finding, in terms of getting everything set up, we're working with entertainment studios, we're working with the medical training people, we're working with dentists and surgeons to actually overlay virtual data directly onto a patient's body, for better or worse. We're working with diagnostic and therapeutic specialists to create new tools for helping particularly young children, but also looking at diagnostic models for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's by using AR stimulation in a controlled environment. And we're also using this to build contextually driven, multiple layered guidebooks or guides to places of interest, whether that's from museums to historic buildings. In terms of rationalizing the experience, we're just at the stage of starting to go from being able to say, in AR Kit or AR Core, that's a plain surface. Next step is, well, actually, that's probably a table, to, actually, it's an IKEA table, to, oh, with a bit of more context, it's my dining table, and being able to deliver content on that basis. And I'll just finish there by saying that we have adopted a similar model to the SAE's definition of autonomous vehicles in different levels of augmented reality. So if we start in about 1584 with the very first examples of Pepper's Ghost, we are now at the ability to be able to map and start to rationalize what we can do, and that's with self-driving vehicles, with AR Kit, AR Core, things like Google Glass and its contemporaries. So literally, we are now, I would say, at about level 3 or 4 in a much larger field. Once we move on a few centuries, and I have to do this because somebody mentioned it earlier, we do actually have a holodeck at bottom right there. What we have to remember when we start using science fiction as examples is science fiction can usefully ignore the laws of physics. We can't. So thank you very much. Sorry, that was a little bit rushed, but thank you.